Quick question. What's your favorite sport? Not what you casually watch. Not what's on in the background at the bar. What sport actually makes you feel something? What sport do you defend in arguments? What sport do you plan your whole week around? Here's the thing. That answer just told me more about you than you realize. Because the sport you love isn't random. It's not just about entertainment or athleticism or team loyalty. It's about psychology. It's about what you value, what you fear, what you're trying to prove, and what wound from your past is still running your life without you even knowing it. Football fans need control war. They crave strategy and hierarchy and brotherhood forged through battle. Basketball fans need individual brilliance. They want to shine, to stand out, to be recognized for their personal greatness. Baseball fans are hiding in tradition. They're romanticizing a slower time because the present moves too fast. Hockey fans are proving they're tougher than they look. They respect grit over flash, scars over style. Soccer fans need to feel sophisticated. They see themselves as more cultured, more global, more evolved than the typical American sports fan. And combat sports fans trust no one but themselves. They've been let down by teams, by people, by systems. So they only respect what one person can do alone. And here's what's wild. You probably just got defensive about your sport. You're already thinking of reasons why I'm wrong. Why your love for basketball isn't about needing attention. Why your obsession with football isn't about controlled aggression. Why your dedication to baseball isn't about escaping into nostalgia. That reaction right there, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Before we go deeper, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment with just your sport. Football, basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, combat sports. Just a sport, nothing else. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why you chose it. And it's going to hit different than you expect. Let's start with the biggest one, American football. If this is your sport, if Sundays are sacred and you're already planning your fantasy draft in July, then you need to hear this. You don't just love football. You need it. You need the structure, the hierarchy, the clearly defined roles where everyone knows their job and the team only works when everyone does their part. You love that football is controlled chaos. It's violent but regulated, aggressive but strategic. It's war with rules. And that appeals to something deep inside you. Football fans see life as a battle, not in a dramatic way, but in a very real sense. You believe the world is competitive and you better be ready. You respect strength, but you also respect intelligence. You know that the best teams aren't just the most talented. They're the most disciplined, the most prepared, the ones who execute the game plan. And here's what you won't admit. You're drawn to football because it legitimizes your need to dominate. In regular life, you can't just tackle your problems or hit someone who disrespects you. But football says you can. Within the lines, within the rules, within the structure. It's an outlet for the part of you that wants to impose your will on the world. Football fans also crave brotherhood. The locker room, the team, the us against them mentality. You want to be part of something bigger than yourself, but not in a soft way. In a warrior way. You want brothers who would go to war for you, who would take a hit for you, who would sacrifice their body for the team. But here's the cost. Football fans often struggle with anything that doesn't have clear rules and roles. Relationships get messy because there's no playbook. Emotions get complicated because you can't just execute a strategy. Life doesn't always have a clear winner and loser, and that makes you uncomfortable. You've trained yourself to see everything as fourth and goal. Everything is a battle to be won. And sometimes that mentality crushes the things that need gentleness instead of force. The uncomfortable truth about football fans is this. You love the sport because it gives you permission to be aggressive in a world that tells you to be nice. But you confuse controlled violence with strength. And real strength, the kind that builds instead of destroys, the kind that connects instead of conquers, that doesn't come a playbook. That requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like the exact opposite of what football taught you to value. Now, let's talk about basketball. If this is your sport, if you live for the highlights and you're still arguing about who the greatest of all time is, then you're a different kind of person entirely. You don't want to be part of the team in the way football fans do. You want to be the star. You want the ball in your hands with the game on the line. You want your name chanted. You want the moment where everyone in the arena knows it's your time. Basketball fans don't just appreciate individual brilliance. They need it. They need proof that one person can change everything. And let's be real. Basketball fans care about style. It's not enough to win. You have to win with flair. The dunk matters more than a layup, even though they're both worth 2 points. The crossover, the ankle breaker, the poster, these moments matter because they're not just about scoring. They're about making people remember you. Basketball is fast, it's flashy. It's about being impossible to ignore. Here's what basketball reveals about you. You're terrified of being invisible. You're scared that if you're not constantly doing something impressive, people will forget about you. You've learned that quiet competence doesn't get rewarded. Loud excellence does. So you chase the highlight, the recognition, the moment that proves you're not just good, you're special. Basketball fans are also impatient. Football's slow between plays. Baseball's glacial. But basketball never stops. It's constant action, constant momentum, constant opportunity for something incredible to happen. And that matches how you live. You want results now. You want progress immediately. You want to see the scoreboard change in real time. But here's the shadow side. Basketball fans struggle with being part of something where they're not the center. You say you're a team player, but you get frustrated when you're not the one making the big plays. You say you're happy for other success, but internally you're wondering why it wasn't you. You built your entire identity around standing out, which means blending in feels like death. The hard truth for basketball fans is this. Your need for individual recognition is actually loneliness in disguise. You want to be seen because you're scared of being forgotten. You want to be the hero because you don't trust that anyone will care about you if you're not spectacular. And that's exhausting, because you can't be spectacular every day. And on the days you're not, you don't know who you are. Let's shift to baseball. If this is your sport, if you actually enjoy a 3-hour game that might end 1-0, if you care about statistics from the 1800s, then something very specific is going on psychologically. You're a romantic, not in the love sense, in the nostalgic sense. Baseball fans don't just watch the game. They romanticize it. The smell of the grass, the crack of the bat, the 7th inning stretch. America's pastime. The way your grandfather listened to games on the radio. Baseball isn't just a sport to you. It's a connection to a time you believe was better. And here's the thing. You might be right. Baseball does move slower. It does have more tradition. It does require patience and attention to detail and an appreciation for nuance. But you're not watching baseball just because you love the sport. You're watching it because the modern world moves too fast, and baseball is your escape into a pace that feels manageable. Baseball fans value statistics because numbers don't lie and they don't change. You can debate who the best player is right now, but you can't debate what someone's batting average was in 1965. There's comfort in that. In fact, that's stay facts. In records, that means something permanent. But let's be honest about what this reveals. You're uncomfortable with the present. You don't like how fast everything moves now, how shallow everything feels, how disposable culture has become. So you retreat into baseball, into a sport that refuses to speed up, that honors its history, that believes the old ways were better. Here's the cost. Baseball fans can become stuck. You resist change not because it's bad, but because it's different. You value tradition so much that innovation feels like betrayal. You love the past so much that you're not fully present in your actual life. You're always comparing now to then, and now always loses. The uncomfortable truth about baseball fans is this. Your love of tradition is actually fear of the future. You've convinced yourself that slower is better, that patient is wiser, that the old ways are superior. But sometimes you're just scared. Scared of a world that's moved on without asking your permission. Scared of being left behind. Scared of admitting that maybe the game you love is beautiful precisely because it's frozen in time. And maybe you are too. Now we need to talk about hockey. If this is your sport, if you respect fighting in a professional league, and you think basketball players are soft, then you've got a very specific psychology going on. You're the underdog. Not in reality, maybe, but in identity. Hockey fans see themselves as tougher than they look, grittier than people expect, more resilient than anyone gives them credit for. You respect hockey because it doesn't apologize for being rough. Teeth are optional. Blood is part of the game. You play through injuries that would sideline athletes in other sports. Hockey fans have a chip on their shoulder. You're tired of football getting all the attention. Tired of basketball being called the exciting sport. Tired of people saying hockey is too niche or too regional or too hard to follow. You know what you love is real. And you don't need validation from casual fans who don't understand it. Here's what this reveals. You value toughness above almost everything else. Not just physical toughness, mental toughness, emotional toughness, the ability to get knocked down and get back up without complaining. Hockey players lose teeth and finish their shift. That's the standard, and that's how you try to live. But let's dig into why you need this so badly. Hockey fans often feel underestimated. Maybe you grew up being overlooked. Maybe you're not the biggest or the loudest or the most naturally gifted. So you compensated by being the toughest, by outworking everyone, by proving that grit beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. You love hockey because it validates that philosophy. The sport rewards a grinder, the player who blocks shots and kills penalties and does the dirty work nobody sees. You don't need to be the star. You just need to be respected. And in hockey, respect is earned through pain tolerance and work ethic. Here's the shadow side. Hockey fans can be judgmental. You look down on people who you perceive as soft. You have very little patience for complaints or excuses or emotional vulnerability. You think most people are too comfortable, too entitled, too willing to quit when things get hard. And while there's some truth there, there's also a trap. The uncomfortable truth about hockey fans is this. Your toughness is compensation. You're so scared of being seen as weak that you've made being hard your entire identity. You respect pain because you're afraid of what it would mean if you admitted something hurt. You value fighting through because you don't know how to ask for help. And deep down, you're just as vulnerable as everyone else. You've just gotten really good at pretending you're not. Let's talk about soccer, or football, as you insist on calling it. If this is your sport, if you wake up early for Premier League matches and you roll your eyes at American sports, then you know exactly what I'm about to say. You see yourself as different, more cultured, more global, more sophisticated than the average American sports fan. You love soccer because it connects you to the rest of the world in a way American football or baseball never could. You appreciate the strategy, the skill, the fact that it's the beautiful game, not the brutal game. And here's what's really going on. You need to feel like you're above the typical American sports culture. You studied abroad, or you traveled, or you just decided early on that American exceptionalism in sports was provincial and boring. So you chose soccer. You chose a sport that signals you're worldly, that you have taste, that you understand something most Americans don't. Soccer fans are often intellectuals. You like that soccer is strategic, without constant stoppages. You appreciate the flow, the possession, the chess match of it. You respect that a 0-0 draw can be beautiful if you understand what you're watching. And you love reminding people who don't get it that they just don't understand the nuance. But let's be real about what this reveals. You're performing sophistication. You're using your sport choice as cultural signaling. You want people to know you're not like those Americans who only care about touchdowns and home runs. You're different. You're refined. You get it. Here's the cost. Soccer fans can be insufferable. You talk down to people who prefer other sports. You act like your taste is superior. You correct people who call it soccer, even though you're in America, and that's what we call it here. You've turned your sport preference into an identity marker that separates you from people you consider beneath you. The uncomfortable truth about soccer fans is this. Your love of the sport is tangled up with insecurity about being American. You're not confident enough in who you are to just enjoy what you enjoy. You need your sport choice to prove something about your intellect, your culture, your evolution beyond the average person. And that's not appreciation. That's performance. You're not watching soccer because you love it more than other sports. You're watching it because of what you think it says about you. Now, let's get to combat sports. MMA, boxing, kickboxing, whatever. If this is your world, if you think team sports are for people who need others to carry them, then you've got the most interesting psychology of all. You trust no one. Not fully. Not really. You've been let down by teams, by people, by systems that promise if you did your part, others would do theirs. And they didn't. So you stop depending on anyone. You only respect what one person can do alone. One fighter. One opponent. No excuses. No teammates to blame. Just pure skill and will. Combat sports fans see everything else as fake. Football has too many players. Basketball has too much showboating. Baseball is too slow. Hockey's fun, but still a team. But combat sports? That's real. That's two people finding out who's actually better. No fluke plays. No lucky bounces. Just fighting until someone can't anymore. Here's what this reveals about you. You're an individualist to your core. You don't like depending on others because dependency feels like weakness. You've learned that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. So you respect combat sports because they validate that worldview. It's you versus the world, and you better be ready. Combat sports fans also have high standards. You think most people are soft. You think most people quit too easily. You think most people have never truly tested themselves, and that's why they don't know who they really are. You probably trained, maybe not professionally, but you felt what it's like to push past where you thought you could go, and that experience changed you. But here's the shadow side. Combat sports fans are lonely. You've built your entire identity around not needing anyone, around being self-sufficient, around only trusting yourself. And while that makes you resilient, it also makes you isolated. You don't let people in because letting people in means depending on them. And depending on them means they could let you down. You respect fighters because they're alone in there. But you are too, in your life, in your relationships, in your refusal to be vulnerable with anyone. You confused independence with strength. And real strength, the kind that builds community and connection and trust, that requires admitting you can't do everything alone. The uncomfortable truth about combat sports fans is this. You're not tougher than everyone else. You're just more scared of being vulnerable. You've made self-reliance your religion because the alternative, trusting others, opening up, building something with people who could hurt you, that's the real fight. And it's the one fight you're not sure you can win. So you stay in the cage, alone, telling yourself that's exactly where you want to be. So which sport is yours? And more importantly, did it call you out? Because here's what you need to understand. Your favorite sport isn't just entertainment. It's a mirror. It reflects your values, your fears, your wounds, and what you're trying to prove to a world that you're scared won't accept you as you are. Football fans are trying to prove they're warriors in a world with no wars. Basketball fans are trying to prove they're special in a world that makes everyone feel average. Baseball fans are trying to prove the old ways were better in a world that won't slow down. Hockey fans are trying to prove they're tough in a world that underestimates them. Soccer fans are trying to prove they're sophisticated in a world they think is beneath them. Combat sports fans are trying to prove they don't need anyone in a world that terrifies them with its unpredictability. None of this makes you bad. None of this makes your sport choice wrong. But it does make it revealing. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You're not just watching a game. You're watching a version of yourself. The version you wish you were. The version you're scared you're not. The version you're working so hard to become that you've forgotten to ask if it's even the version you want to be.